When you're overseas on trials, pursuing a professional contract, you need to make sure you're fueling to recover from session to session and game to game. And I would forgive you for thinking that it wouldn't be that hard, because that's exactly what I thought. But what I only understood when I moved to the other side of the world is that you're going to have to think about supermarkets being different, how you're going to transport all your groceries, and even the cooking appliances you have available when you're in temporary accommodation. So I'm going to share with you 3 big mistakes I made with my nutrition at the start of my travel journey so you don't have to make those same mistakes. And I did actually learn quite quickly. I was able to adapt and adjust. But if you're landing and starting trials within a week or so, you don't have a few weeks to make mistakes and feel underfueled and underperforming. You need to be there right at the start. And the first mistake is not having a good enough kitchen to be able to cook things. In a previous video about my first week in London, you will have seen that my first Airbnb only had a kettle and a microwave, literally the bare basics, and that made it super challenging. And it's something I just 100% took for granted back in Australia. I never had to think, would I have a kitchen to be able to cook something? I just went into the kitchen and did it. And so with those supplies, I was only really able to have oats in the morning, egg and baked beans on toast for lunch, a protein yogurt for a snack, and then I'd go to the bakery and get something at night. And it doesn't take a genius to work out that that's severely underfueling for my protein, my carbohydrate requirements. And so I was still training at this point and not recovering as quick and not probably performing during those sessions as well as I could have been. And so from that point on, I really prioritized making sure each place I stayed had somewhere I could cook, just so I could get my proteins in. I could cook my staple meals like my spaghetti bolognese, where I'd throw together some mince, a tomato-based jar, bit of chili powder, and then some veg like some capsicum and carrots. If you are really stuck, I reflected that I probably could have used some more microwave meals or microwave rice and things like that. But again, back in Australia, I hadn't really had to use those because I'd usually prefer to cook things myself. And so I wasn't as prepared in that mindset to use those things. And so that takes us to mistake number 2. And mistake number 2 was assuming that it would be super easy to just find the same products I was used to. The supermarkets will be different and will carry different products. And one of the biggest things I struggled with was the protein options available. Still had all the chickens and meats, but some of the other things like the yogurts and the protein bars were very different to what I was used to. And not only that, but the packaging and the product information on the back of the products can be very different. So where I was used to just being able to turn it around and easily navigate that to see how much protein there was, for instance, that became a lot more challenging. And another thing on top of this is the additional fatigue from having to carry all your groceries back to where you're staying. And so even with transport around, until you have a car sorted out, that can be quite fatiguing if you're walking a couple of kilometers with all your groceries. And so I would recommend planning where you're going to stay and knowing how close different supermarkets are to that location. And the final thing under this mistake is budget. Things can vary in price in different countries, and you're also going to lose some money in your currency conversion. So you always want to have a bit more than you actually think you need. And the final mistake I made was taking too long to find supplements or other various food sources that could meet my nutritional demands. The problem at higher levels is making sure we comply with the anti-doping policies. And so you can't just go in and grab any protein powder and just hope it's okay. It needs to be one of the tested ones. And then you've got the additional thing of, do you actually have the space in your luggage to carry around 1 kilo, 2 kilos of protein powder? You probably don't. And if you need to move for a new trial, that just creates the pain of having to know what you can carry between different places. And so one way to combat this is, once I'd fixed mistake number 1, I was cooking a lot of chicken. I was using that on things like toasted wraps at dinners, and then also using things like protein yogurts to supplement my protein throughout the day with snacks. So definitely plan ahead and know what meal options and snacks you have available to meet your protein and your carbohydrate needs particularly. It's not always going to be an ideal situation, but minimizing the mistakes to make sure you can perform at your best is super important. Let me know in the comments if you've traveled for football and how you found the whole experience of trying to meet your nutritional demands while on the run. Catch you in the next part of this series on pursuing a professional football contract in England.